Salvete omnes. This is exercise A of chapter 49. In chapter 49, we are focusing on dependent subjunctive clauses, cum clauses, temporal, causal, and concessive cum clauses. Temporal is also called circumstantial, and the concessive is also known as adversative. Basically, when, since, although. A lot of when, since, althoughs in this chapter. These follow a sequence of tenses. In exercise A, we are to take these Latin sentences and these clauses right here, so ut and quod and postquam, ubi and simul atque, these are temporal or causal clauses. Temporal are clauses of time, and causal clauses are one to show cause, because, since, or as. The instructions say that we are to take these clauses and we are to turn them into cum clauses. So we have to make them into cum clauses using the conjunction cum. So number one, ut ad villam ambulabamus, parvum animal exilvar concurrit. So ut plus the indicative, notice this, ut plus the indicative means when, since, as, or how. What? Why does it have so many meanings? Because it does. So this could be either temporal, it can mean when, as we were walking to the farmhouse, when we were walking to the farmhouse, parvum animal exilvar concurrit, a small animal ran from the forest. So that when we were walking, a small animal ran from the forest, or a small animal ran from the forest when we were walking to the farmhouse. So the action is purely one of time, temporal. If that is the case, if this clause right here is purely a temporal clause, and we're just saying that as we were walking to the farmhouse, the small animal ran from the forest, then we can just keep that verb in the indicative, because cum can take the past tense, any past tense of the indicative, to indicate purely a temporal relationship with the main clause. So cum ad villam ambulabamus, parvum animal exilvar concurrit is pretty much the same in meaning as ut ad villam ambulabamus. We're just exchanging ut for cum. However, ut can also mean since. Since we were walking to the farmhouse, a small animal ran from the forest, meaning that our being there, our walking to the farmhouse, caused this small animal to run from the forest. It was frightened by us or something, and it ran out of the forest. So this is a causal clause, or could be a causal clause, explaining how this, the main clause, came about. As we were walking to the farmhouse, a small animal ran from the forest. Wait, I thought that was the exact same translation you gave for the temporal version, as we were walking to the farmhouse. Yes, as can also be causal. Wait, you mean as can be temporal and also causal? Yes, like ut can also be temporal and also causal. So English does it too. Why are you mad? So we could also exchange ut for cum. However, instead of using the indicative, this could be a cum causal, or we could even say cum circumstantial, because we are in secondary sequence. So change that imperfect indicative to the imperfect subjunctive. Cum ad villam ambularemus, parvum animal exilvar concurrit. So answer 1A down here, this is purely a temporal clause, only a temporal clause, whereas 1B, we could translate that as a cum circumstantial, kind of a past tense secondary sequence temporal clause, or we could translate it as cum causal. Once again, keep your options open. When you see this word and you determine it's a conjunction, your name of the game is when, since, although. Secunda, sententia secunda. Quod Marcus pecuniam amiserat, patris ieram timuit. So quod is a conjunction, meaning because, takes the indicative. Quod Marcus pecuniam amiserat, because Marcus had lost the money. Patris ieram timuit, he feared his father's wrath. Why did he fear his father's wrath? Because he had lost the money. So what we want is we want to exchange this causal clause, and it's definitely and only a causal clause, with a cum causal clause. So exchange quod for cum. Because Marcus is the subject of both verbs amiserat and timuit, we want to put Marcus first. So Marcus cum pecuniam, change amiserat from the indicative to the pluperfect subjunctive, because the losing of the money happened before Dad getting mad about it, or him fearing that Dad would get mad about it. First he lost the money, and then he got scared that Dad's going to get mad about it. So we have something like Marcus cum pecuniam amisisset, patris ieram timuit. Tertia, sententia tertia. Postquam pervenit in Galliam, Caesar cum Galli saepe pugnabant. Where do you have a cum in this sentence? But this is preposition cum. Cum plus the ablative. Oh, preposition, with the Gauls, accompaniment. Caesar was often fighting with the Gauls. When? Postquam pervenit in Galliam, after he had arrived in Gaul. Remember, we can take an after. After he arrived in Gaul, Caesar often fought with the Gauls. So it's a temporal clause. After shows time. When did Caesar fight with the Gauls? After he arrived in Gaul. So postquam, we want to exchange postquam with cum. We want to go ahead and we have a past tense. We're in a secondary sequence. So something like cum pervenisset in Galliam, Caesar cum Galli saepe pugnabat. Or we could say Caesar cum pervenisset in Galliam, cum Galli saepe pugnabat. Quarta, sententia quarta. Ut equites suos pulsos esse vidit, ex proelio excessit. So ut, once again, like in prima, ut could be either temporal or causal. Could mean when as or since as. So when he saw the cavalry, the knights, had been beaten. And whose knights are they? They're his own. This is the reflexive possessive adjective. Suos, so it agrees with equites, accusative plural masculine. Equites, accusative plural masculine. Notice pulsos, also accusative plural masculine. The su part, you circle the su part and draw an arrow to the subject. That's right, the subject. So whose knights are they? They're the subject's knights. They're his own. So when he saw his own knights had been beaten, he left from the battle. So we're in secondary sequence. We have cum temporal. So cum temporal. So when he saw his own knights had been beaten, so when he was seeing this, he then left from the battle. So these are contemporaneous. So we want the imperfect subjunctive here. Cum equites suos pulsos esse videret, ex proelio excessit. Quinta, sententia quinta. Ubi in Italia sum, Romae maneo. So, when I am in Italy, I stay, this is the locative, I stay at Rome. So this is a sense of whenever. Like when I'm in Italy, I stay at Rome. Whenever I'm in Italy, I stay at Rome. This sense of whenever is a purely temporal one, so we want to exchange ubi with cum and keep the indicative. Keep the indicative. Cum in Italia sum, Romae maneo. We're just going to exchange ubi with cum. This is purely one of distinction, purely one of temporal distinction. And sexta, sententia sexta. Simulatque me valere iussit, discessit. So simul-atque means as soon as, so this is a temporal clause. So as soon as me valere iussit, as soon as he iussit, he ordered me to be well. In English, we would rather say he bid me to be well, or he bid me farewell. Discessit, he left. So as soon as he bid me farewell, he left. We just want to exchange this temporal clause, simulatque me valere iussit, with a cum clause, so a cum temporal clause. So cum plus the indicative. Now the corresponding is cum primum for simulatque, as soon as. That's going to be cum primum. So we want cum primum me valere iussit instead of simulatque me valere iussit. Cum primum me valere iussit, discessit. And remember that cum primum is usually followed by a perfect tense when we're in secondary sequence, even if the pluperfect would sound better in English. So something like, as soon as he had bid me farewell, he left. He then left. Discessit is perfect tense. Optime, very well done. You are now ready to move on to exercise B of chapter 49.